Hello everyone and welcome to Eorzea Armoire, a series about the background of some of Heideland's more epic and dense weapons, armor and artifacts. We'll be investigating the lore of each of these items both within Final Fantasy XIV and the Final Fantasy franchise in general, as well as the amazing and sometimes obscure real-world people, events and artifacts upon which they are based. As an iconic weapon, the Curtana is a relative newcomer in the Final Fantasy franchise, and little background is offered for its appearances. In Final Fantasy XI, it is a level 75 thief weapon that can spawn in small rooms of Veluganon Palace, and this might rightly seem antonymous to its Final Fantasy XIV counterpart, but I think we'll soon see that Curtana is an artifact of such esteem and value that it should be the crowning glory of any thief's collection. In Final Fantasy XIV, I firmly believe that the origins of each of the relic weapons should not be considered with great consequence. The whole point of your relic weapon is that it grows in power and fame alongside the Warrior of Light. The really important part of its history and lore is that which you are personally forging. That said, Geralt tends to offer us some brief insight that generally references or parallels the real or mythical artifact upon which the relic is based, and this is no different. As he has it, in the voice that I give him in my head, "'Twas the blade wielded by Jarl Tristram the True, one of the first three paladins. Story goes that, when the first Sultan of Ul'dah formed the Sultan Sworn, he had 3 swords forged from the same ore used to make Oathkeeper, one for each of his champions. Curtana was one of the blades, and he was laid to rest with its master when he kicked the bucket. Rumour has it though, Jarl Tristram's tomb was plundered recently and Curtana taken. To give you the gist of it, a young Tristram goes before the Sultan, he pledges him his sword, the Sultan Swarm are formed, Tristram defeats an Amaljar pugilist in a famous duel, then sets off on a quest to retrieve the sacred goblet. Things get a bit fanciful from then on. Geralt gives the origins of Ul'dah as a parallel to the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round, which gives an interesting angle on the Sultanate, and one of Arthur's knights, as we may know, was named Tristram. Now Tristram, more commonly known as Tristan, is a character treated in Celtic folklore, Arthurian romance and 15th century French prose before being given the proper Wagnerian treatment in his 1859 opus Tristan und Isolde. Early writers of his stories either neglect or mutually contradict his origins, so what we're left with is an amalgamation of many stories, any of which may or may not be true and may or may not refer to the same Tristan. Since the 15th century, these stories have been conflated into a single epic with a single hero, and such an epic it is that we couldn't possibly have the time to detail it all here today. On the other hand, that's precisely what we're here for, so you'll thank me for giving you the condensed and abridged version. Tristan was the nephew of King Mark of Cornwall, and after his happy defeat of the knight Morholt, he's sent to Ireland to bring back Isolde for his uncle to marry. On the way, they both ingest a love potion, given by some accounts to be accidental and others to be the result of Isolde's own machinations. Isolde marries Mark, but takes Tristan as a lover, a moral shame the responsibility from which they are spared by the device of the potion. Eventually the potion wears off, but by that time Tristan and Isolde are very much fettered to each other. As with most love triangles, Tristan loves and respects his king, Isolde appreciates Mark's kind treatment of her, and Mark both loves Tristan as his son and champion, and Isolde as his wife. King Mark eventually entraps the pair and condemns Tristan to hang and Isolde to burn at the stake. Tristan rescues Isolde and spirits her away before leaving to join the company of Arthur on various adventures. So where in this account is the legendary Curtana, you ask? Well, just as our own relic is primarily a testament to our own deeds, Curtana is valued and famed for the virtues of the wielder, rather than being simply a gift from the gods imbued with hellfire or such that so many legendary weapons seem to be. This quality seems to me to make it all the more worthy as a relic weapon in Final Fantasy XIV. The power of Curtana is earned by and not gifted to the wielder. This might seem like a trivial distinction, but it is a feature that I feel lacking in many of the latest models of the relic weapons based on divine gifts, such as Longinus or Excalibur. The legend of Curtana outlives that of its original wielder by many centuries, and like Tristan, the blade features across a number of stories in which it may or may not be the self-same. Folklore, however, gives it continuity, and for the sake of a good story, we'll suspend our disbelief and allow it the same. The second wielder of Curtana that we know of is Olga Dansk, who was never actually treated by Danish folklore until after the French epic Chanson de Roland. He is first an antagonist, fighting against Charlemagne for several years before redeeming himself and becoming a champion of Charlemagne's incursion into Islamic Spain, wielding the Curtana, which he is said to have inherited from Tristan. Given that Charlemagne, at least in folklore, is of the same glorious warrior king archetype as King Arthur, and similarly surrounded by a tight circle of champion holy crusaders, we can see that Curtana has developed a habit for placing itself in the hands of paladins. Its value and legend was already conflated with that of Tristan, and Olga proved a worthy second act. La Chevalerie d'Ogier de Danmache, circa 1200, attests that Olga's son was murdered by Charlot, son of Charlemagne, during a heated chess incident. Olga swore to murder Charlot in retribution and was banished before he could successfully do so. Now, when Charlemagne had to go against a pagan enemy that he could not defeat without the strength of Olga, Olga agreed to help him on the condition that he be allowed to execute Charlot. What then transpired was basically a tired appropriation of Abraham and Isaac, with Charlemagne accepting the terms, Olga raising his sword and being interrupted by St. Michael, who shattered the tip of Curtana, commanding Olga to spare Charlot's life, and henceforth subtitling the blade as the Sword of Mercy. Olga soon after used it to mercifully slaughter thousands of men in battle, kill a giant in single combat, and rescue and marry a princess of England. Other pros, including Thomas Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur, claim that Curtana's tip was actually broken off when Tristan embedded it in Morholt's skull, forcefully inheriting his position at the round table. Gerald's reference to Tristan is more transparent, but he also tells us that Eorzea's Curtana had two forge brothers for two other champions of the Soldensworn. Now, Olga's Curtana bore the inscription, "My name is Curtana, of the same steel and temper as Joyeuse and Durendal." Joyeuse and Durendal were the blades of Charlemagne and Roland respectively, two swords that also appear liberally throughout the Final Fantasy franchise. So whether or not we inherit these blades at some point in Final Fantasy XIV, we can expect them to be floating around somewhere. Olga himself was apparently never killed, but instead went into a long hibernation in anticipation of a future time that he would be needed to defend Denmark. The influence of this legend made it a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, as a Copenhagen-based World War II resistance group took his name and performed relentless sabotage operations against the German occupation forces from 1943 until the end of the war. But Curtana's legend does not end with Olga. In fact, the sword still sees semi-regular public appearances today. First appearing in the British court as part of the coronation of Queen Eleanor of Provence by Henry III in 1236, the very same broken blade has appeared in every coronation of every British monarch since that time, designated as the representation of the merciful qualities of the divine ruler. For what reason they have continued to use a sword, even a blunted one, to represent mercy is beyond me, but when it comes down to it, I suppose that a symbol that isn't phallic simply isn't a symbol worth using. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. I'm really grateful. If you're enjoying this series, then please like and sub for more content. There's plenty more to come, and I really appreciate the support. Until next time, I'm Ethys, and this is the Eorzea Armoire.